Hi, this is Brenda and Elaine.
Welcome to our After the Show episode, where we go deeper into what we learned from our conversations with guests.
It was really great talking to Ashley. I learned a lot about postpartum depression, even though I might have had it, but didn't have a name for it.
Yeah, I think everybody must have it to some degree. I mean, first of all, growing a baby physically in your body, as well as then once the baby's here, it changes your day-to-day existence. It changes you physically. It changes everything about your life. So how can you not?
Yeah, it's a huge adjustment. It's a lot of stress.
Right.
Unless you have a ton of support. Oftentimes, this first baby, you don't know what you're doing. And I thought it was interesting that she called it baby blues at first, which is kind of a way to make it sound less daunting, but then really, as it went on, recognizing that this is serious and this is really something that needs to be addressed.
It can be dangerous. I knew about postpartum depression, but what I was less familiar with was the stigma that she talked about that goes along with it. And it's true, because when you have a new baby, there's a lot of joy around and everyone expects the new mom to be excited and happy, and you are. But you can be more than one thing. And so you want to hide the other side of what you're feeling because of the stigma.
And that's why we need to talk more. The thing is, so many new mothers experience this. And if we sort of knew what to expect, when you're pregnant, to know that there's a potential when the baby arrives that you could be depressed or feel distant from the baby or not have the energy to get up. If we talked more about it with one another, then maybe we'd be more prepared to take action and fix it.
Right. It's such a joyous time. It's such a great thing that is happening in your life, in the life of your family. But it is hard, and there's hard parts to it that we don't share. Like she was talking about breastfeeding. A lot of women give up on breastfeeding because they don't know that it might hurt initially, and that a lot of babies have trouble learning how to actually latch on so that they can feed. And so all of these things, when it's happening to you, you may feel like you're a failure when you don't realize that it happens to most people. So I do think you're right that we do need to talk about it with each other and support each other.
Well, breastfeeding is a great example because everyone's like, oh, it's natural, it's what our bodies are meant to do. And it may be natural, but it doesn't necessarily come naturally. Like, it didn't come naturally for me, and I had to get the help and figure it out, et cetera. But once I figured it out, I was so happy that I was able to do it. I mean, I breastfed Lane for 11 months because it was just so convenient and saved money. And, I definitely am glad I didn't give up. And I didn't give up because I was able to get the help I needed.
Right. And because you knew that the help was available and you knew that your struggles were not singular.
Yeah, but that stuff hurt. When you don't have them latching on right, I still remember how much that hurt.
20-some years later. Right?
Yeah, 20-some.
The other thing that I was really impressed with was her partnership with her doctor. We hear sometimes how people struggle to find a doctor that can partner, but she found a doctor who was not only willing to listen to her, but was willing to take into account the choices that Ashley wanted to make for her own life in determining what the best treatments were.
Yeah, I thought the way Ashley described her relationship with her doctor is really a model of what we all want. It was a trusted relationship. I liked, as you said, that the doctor gave her options. So here's what I think's going on. Here's some ways that we might address it. I thought, wow, that's an excellent doctor. I'm really glad she had the doctor. I'm really glad she had her supportive husband. Let's talk about him for a minute.
Yeah, now, he was there. First of all, he helped her recognize that maybe there's something wrong here, which is important. And then he was willing to step up and do what he needed to do in terms of taking care of the baby, giving her some time alone, using a different birth control method. He was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that she was able to get well. So that is something that we all should applaud him for and search for when we're looking for partners.
Right. Well, since we're talking about husbands, and I love my husband, but you remember when O'Neill and I got married, we said we weren't going to have kids. And then about 5 years into the marriage, I changed. I was like, whoops, I think I want to have children. And he was not on board. And so silly me, I said, okay, well, I'll do everything. I'll do all the work. You just have to help out sometimes at night because I don't know what I was thinking. So we have the baby, and then, I don't know, 5-6 months in, I was exhausted. I was frustrated. He would come home from happy hours after work, and I would just want to scream. And then the baby's waking up in the middle of the night. And I was talking to a friend, and I was like, I'm not good. But I can't ask him.
Oh, you were trying to stick to your original.
I was trying to stick to my agreement. I was like, I can't ask O'Neill to do anything more because he didn't want to have kids. And I told him I would do it all. And she was like, girl, it's time to renegotiate.
Yeah.
You know he loves that baby. And I did. It's a tricky thing.
The same thing that Ashley went through, because she said when her husband was working and she was home, she really said, I'm just going to handle everything because he's the one working and, taking care of us financially. But it's just too much for one person. I think you should accept all the help that you can. And then, like Ashley said, from wherever. Sometimes help is not always your family. I believe that she said her mother was not available to help her, but she found other people in her community who were willing and able.
Her girlfriend and her mother-in-law.
Right.
Remember, her mother-in-law was very supportive.
And I love that Ashley, when she decided it was time to have a second child, she took all the lessons that she learned the first time and applied them to the choices that she made when it was time for her second baby. And it was a blessing that she didn't suffer the same way that she did the second time around.
Yeah, now she has those 2 beautiful sons.
Oh, one other thing. Your first appointment with your doctor is usually 6 weeks after your delivery. Ashley showed us that you don't, and you shouldn't wait. If there's a problem or you're not feeling right, reach out to your doctor. Those schedules are guidelines, and if something is going on outside of the normal, we really need to feel comfortable and adjust the schedule to meet our needs.
True. I agree.
So, though I will not be having another child.
Nor I.
I'm just really happy that we had Ashley on to share all the learnings that she had about postpartum depression. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, it will. Let us know what you learned from this guest.
If you want to support Body Wealth, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. We'd also love it if you give us a 5-star rating and write a review letting us know what you love about the show.
The Body Wealth podcast shares personal stories to inspire you. It does not constitute medical advice. For that, we encourage you to work with a trusted healthcare provider.